Hi everyone, we'll be waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar to accommodate for the rest of the attendees who are in the middle of connecting. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valan Kalika, and I'll be your today's host. A few reminders before we kick off our session. If at any time you experience issues viewing the stream and are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you're using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and it will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. And all the links that I'll be mentioning, they have been already posted on the Q&A or live event Q&A chat. So closed captions in several languages are available during the live broadcast, and you can enable them by clicking on the CC button located at the lower right corner of your screen. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window, simply by clicking on the Ask Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. If you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. Now, we often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on Microsoft Cloud App Security Forum at aka.ms/mcas community. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. We'd love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, and you can do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. I would also like to invite to join us our public community by visiting aka.ms/security-community. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews, which you can sign up for at aka.ms/security-prp. You can request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, register for events, or just join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Yohan Malit and Idan Basri will go over on protecting your GitHub environment using Microsoft Cloud App Security. Both Yohan and Idan are program managers with the Microsoft Cloud App Security team. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to them. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valon. Thank you. So I am Yohan Malit here, and I will be speaking today about how to protect your GitHub environment with Microsoft Cloud App Security. I have Idan Basri with me. We are both program managers. I am part of our customer and experience team, which means I am the interface between our engineers and our customers. And Idan here is part of our feature team. He is designing the features of our awesome products. So let's start with a very quick introduction. Idan, the floor is yours.
Before we start talking about GitHub and why we want to protect GitHub, let's talk about why we want to protect development platforms. And in the last few years, we see growing number of several organizations that use development platforms. And what are the development platforms? It is managing repositories or CI/CD tools. Usually organizations use it for accelerated development and to enhance their productivity of the organization. Including these development platforms, GitHub is one of the largest development platforms in the world today. One of the pain points when using GitHub or other development platforms is that sensitive information, intellectual property, is being in this repository or in the source code. And today, most of the organization has a lack of source code visibility, and then they don't know if there is sensitive information in this code, or even that the configuration of this SaaS application of development platforms is being postured or just has bad configuration that can make a suspicious activity or a risky or potential breach. And I really like this quote from LinkedIn blog that usually today most of the organization know exactly why all the configuration of their discount key, identity provider, etc. But the configuration and the ability to know exactly what happened in the source code is still vague. Next. And in the last few years, we see more and more breaches and public exposures of GitHub or other development platforms. Here, for example, in 2016, we saw Uber that has an exposure of almost 60 million Uber users. That this breach was performed by bad configuration in GitHub. Next, we see DJI and even Scotiabank in 2019. And Amazon in AWS publicly, by accident, had a leakage for specific source code with secrets that was performed by engineering. So today we see more and more exposure like this, and we want our customer to be protected from these exposures. Even in my country, in Israel, last year before the election, a GitHub repository was publicly shared by accident, and then secret information was leaked. That with this secret information, the credential to specific database was exposed, and then a lot of users' data was exposed publicly to all the country. Next. And when we are going to GitHub, we are going to show today 4 use cases that we want you to prevent from. First use case is preventing GitHub repository with sensitive data to be public. Why GitHub repository that are public is can be potentially exposed? Because GitHub repository with sensitive information that can be accessed from anywhere in the world is a potential breach. The second use case is OAuth applications that are becoming growing malicious and suspicious activity that have a lot of influence in your organization. So in this use case, we prevent and alert when GitHub has a connected OAuth application. In the third use case, we will talk about forking of private repository, and we will deep dive in this use case when we'll get to it. And in the fourth use case, we just show not only GitHub common threats, but all MCAS common cloud threats that we prevent, including GitHub in our all built-in policies that we have. Jan, you're on mute.
Thank you. So to help you with all those use cases, MCAS comes to the rescue. So I assume not everybody in the webinar today may be fully familiar with the extent of the capabilities MCAS provides. I will give you a quick one-slide overview, but we definitely have content available online to be educated more on what MCAS can do for you. But MCAS is the CASB by Microsoft and not the CASB for Microsoft, as it is often understood. We are here to help you protect all of your cloud applications. You can either proxy any application through our reverse proxy in MCAS and literally protect any app. And we also have a number of apps with which we have a very, very strong integration, for which we develop API connectors. So by having those API connectors, we can connect directly to the application and gather very important information, such as the exact activities that are happening. Sometimes we can see which accounts are connecting to these applications. We can, for some apps, when it's relevant, inspect the content of the files that are in it. And so we recently added a connector for GitHub. We have connectors for a number of other apps, and we're planning more in the future, of course. And so today we will show you how to use this GitHub app connector to really generate some very quick value using our policies. So a quick note on that: the way you can configure MCAS to protect your applications, you have built-in settings, which we will cover later in this webinar, but you also have the ability to configure your own policies. And these own policies that you configure can be based on any activity that is happening in the application that you care about, for today, GitHub. And you can, to make life easier for you, we came up with templates. Instead of knowing exactly which details are important for the security of your environment, we came up with templates that you can literally enable with a couple clicks. So we will cover the different scenarios of those templates that we have covered today. Obviously, if you have more detailed knowledge on which activities are important to you in GitHub, you can also create your own policies. Today, we want to make sure that we focus on easy win, making sure that you are able to configure those templates.
So for the first use case, when we have a public repository in GitHub, we have our built-in template policy that you also can fine-tune when you will enter, and Jan will show this in demonstration afterwards. So first of all, why we want to be alerted when a public repository or when a repository is being from a state of private repository to a state of public repository. First of all, when a private repository is being created, usually when users are working in this repository, they enter some intellectual property of this repository. If this repository is from the beginning was public, usually the users of this repository, developers, are aware of it and don't put information in this repository that can harm the organization. But when suddenly a repository, by accident, by purpose, or by a malicious user, make this repository from private to public, it can make a risky or potential state of the organization, or even have a potential breach by this action. So MCAS can detect if a repository is becoming from private to public and be alerted, and you can be alerted when this is being converted, this state of the repository. Another option, when you can fine-tune it, is when a specific user has a repeated activity. If, for example, a user has been compromised and then it go to several private repository and make this repository from the state of private to public, because it wants to take data from this repository or just to expose this repository to another users. So we can alert when this user is doing a repeated activity of making several repository public. Next. For the second use case, we have another built-in policy that just you can configure immediately when you have MCAS. It's about OAuth application. So I think that most of you heard about SolariGate and how it can harm your organization when you have OAuth application. And one of the surface attackers that use SolariGate used OAuth application in order to get some information and to continue in their surface attack. So in OAuth application, many organizations can give the entity that connected this application several actions or several capabilities of actions that can be performed in this SaaS application. If it's in OAuth 365, Salesforce, Google Workspace, and GitHub also. So we in MCAS give you the ability to see which OAuth applications are connected to the organization and even which user connected these OAuth applications. And if we see that this activity is being done multiple times, you can be alerted also, not by a single activity, just as the previous policy. So after you see, for example, OAuth application has been connected to a GitHub organization, you can revoke this specific user or to go to the GitHub owner and to investigate exactly which activities and then decide if you want to revoke this OAuth application. Next. The third use case is about enablement of repository forking. So what is repository forking? When developers create repository, they can create it from scratch, or they can create the repository from another repository that already has data. Why that a developer will do such thing? Because they want to use all the data that already was deployed and was implemented in other repositories, in other code. It's like copying the repository and using a new instance of this repository. By default, when a repository is private mode, the configuration is disabled for forking this repository. Why? Because private repositories has usually or can has sensitive information in this repository or intellectual property or other secret information of the organization. And GitHub, by default, don't allow to do forking of this private repository. But because GitHub wants to give you the ability for the GitHub owner, the ability to fork any repository, even if it's private, it allow you to enable this forking action. And when the configuration is being changed from disablement to enablement of a repository forking, we in MCAS can alert you to that this is a risky activity and risky configuration that has been done as part of our SaaS security posture management capabilities for GitHub and even other configuration that has posture in your organization. So right now we have three different use cases. First, the use case of public repository, private repository that became public. Second is about OAuth applications, and third is about enablement of repository forking. In all these, you can be alerted, you can suspend the user that performed this action, and you can investigate all the activities that was previously or after this malware or risky activity. Next.
And let's go nothing like a demo to illustrate what Idan just mentioned. So I'm going to switch from the PowerPoint slide to our awesome MCAS test environment here that you can see. And we're going to show you quickly how to create those policies, how to configure them. You can tweak them a little bit very simply. We're going to give you a quick overview of how those connectors work as well. So for a start, you can see here, this is my MCAS environment, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and you can see that we connected a few apps, including GitHub. So let's click on GitHub here, and you will see a few things that we can have access to. You can see which activity is happening. This is a lab, so you won't see much activity. There's just a couple connections. But if you had a more global environment, you would see right away where the connections are coming from. You can see which accounts are connected to this GitHub environment, which account have been synced. So you can see mine here and a number of our people in our team. Idan is around. And you can also see here the activity log. So that's where it becomes really interesting. This activity log is basically giving you an idea of all the activities that are happening in your GitHub environment. You can see a number of them here. We're gonna just look for a couple examples, but if we were talking about repository forking, if you just want to look at if it was enabled before, you will see it here, and private repository forking enablement. So here, in that case, that's a test that we made, and we did enable private repository forking in the environment. So it's detected as an activity. Right now, we're not triggering an alert just yet. Let me demo that very quickly. So we have a list of policies here that we're able to leverage. What we're going to do is create a policy from the template. It's a very simple operation. So my recommendation in general, if you connect a new application, we have templates that apply to all your apps that are very generic, but we also have templates that are very specific to each app. And in this case, we're talking about GitHub. So if you go to the template list and you make a quick search for the application you care about, in our case GitHub, you will see a number of relevant templates. So today we're going to enable the first scenario that we saw earlier. Repository access level becomes public. You can see we already have a couple policies that we created based on this template. I just click on the little plus button, and boom, that's it. The policy shows up. If I do nothing else and click create, that's just fine. It will work out, and we will have the policy just working fine. If I want to tweak it, I can apply any change that I want to these settings. So I can make this a repeated activity if I want to see that, okay, maybe sharing one repository is fine, but if it happens more than several times, it's probably something malicious. That could be an example. Or I can filter by users. If I know that somebody is a risky user, I can simply add a filter per user. And let's add myself. And now the policy will only apply to actions that I perform, not Idan, nobody else in the environment. So that's as simple as that. Then I click create, and the policy is created. Next time I make a repository public, it will automatically trigger that policy. So to make sure that we have some data to show you, if you're wondering what those alerts would look like, we have another policy that we created. Not based on a template, allowing deletion of repository. So that's another policy that we have. This one we created from scratch, and just to give you a quick idea of the settings, it's the same concept where if we add more permissions to suppress, to delete repositories, then we trigger an alert. So for that policy, we have 2 matches. And you can see the activities that are matching right away. You can see the users that perform these activities. You can see exactly the date, the country where it happened from. So all of that data is very valuable to help you investigate and understand what happened. So maybe it's not a big deal, and all you're going to want to do is just disable that setting in this case. Or if it was a shared repository, you would simply want to unshare it if that was your need, or double checking that it should be shared or not. But at least you know right away what is happening in the environment. If you click on the alert page, you have a more comprehensive view of all the alerts. And you can decide that if your focus is GitHub, you want to filter just on all the GitHub related alerts, and you would be able to see that in this window. So makes it very simple to configure, very simple to investigate, and that's really what we want here. We want to make sure that if you need to protect your GitHub environment, you have just a few steps. You start with connecting GitHub, which we did prior to that webinar, and then you are able to, just with a few clicks, create those policy templates and get some value. As you start working with it, you can also create custom policies and go a little further in your configuration to a bit more deeper settings. So that's for our templates. But on top of that, by just connecting GitHub, even before you connect those, you create those policy, you have some value through our threat protection engines. So our threat protection story is really something that is very generic and in the good sense of the words, because it simply means that we are able, by default, to by simply connecting applications, we can protect them very globally, very generically. So we have some some policies that apply to almost any app out there. For example, if there is an activity from a suspicious IP address, that's something that is applying to GitHub or to Box or to Office in exactly the same way. If you have connections from infrequent countries or impossible travel between two sessions, that's also something that is very, very generic and that we want to enable right away. So for that, you have basically nothing to do. It just happens as soon as you're connecting your environment. And so here in this slide, we have a list, sorry, of a number of detections that we have. We're adding some on a very regular basis. So you may see some in your console that are not in this slide because we just added new ones just last week. And you will see that being updated very commonly. So follow that that thread, but know that simply connecting your app is already helping you gain some value. And as soon as you configure those templates, you have even more value. We promised you to give you an overview on how to protect your GitHub environment in less than 30 minutes. I think we're just at this mark, and we have the rest of the hour for any question that you guys would have. I see that there were a number of questions in the chat, and thank you so much to our teammates Sarazin, Erin, John, Dan, Caroline for responding to all of these. If there are any additional questions, we're happy to respond and help you if you have anything specific.
Thanks, Johan and Idan. Yeah, the team is responding on questions, but it seems like there was a theme on the connectors, and so would like to raise that and see what are the next connectors that MCAS team is planning to launch.
So the next connectors that we plan to launch, first of all, it's Slack. That in the next couple of months we will launch Slack connector also, and you will be able to enjoy all the built-in policies and to build by your own customized policies in Slack. And then the next connector afterwards will be Workplace by Facebook. It will be launched 3 months afterwards, and again you will be able to enjoy all the built-in policies that Johan talked about also. And afterwards, our connector that we are planning to launch is Zoom.
Great, thank you for that, Idan. There's a question about, is it possible to allow corporate users access GitHub using their corporate ID, but not using their personal IDs on the same devices?
So if you can maybe specify that a little bit more. So if you have two GitHub, I assume the way I understand it is you would have two GitHub IDs, one personal, one corporate. MCAS will not help you prevent the corporate connection at the browser level, but it will control that anything that it will give you control over what happens with the corporate one, but not so much with the personal one.
And I will add that if in your corporate organization, a non-corporate user connected to it, you can prevent it from MCAS, or you can be alerted and then prevent it manually or automatically, of course.
Okay, great, thank you. The next one is we have multiple tenants in Azure, and are there any plans to make MCAS multi-tenant in the future?
So MCAS is currently multi-tenant for non-Microsoft applications, actually. So if you have several GitHub, I mean, GitHub is Microsoft, but it's handled separately. So if you have several GitHub tenants, that works. If you have several Box or AWS tenants, you can have as many instances as you want within MCAS. That being said, for Office and Azure, as of today, this is not a possibility, simply because there's so much ingrained into the concept of tenants that an MCAS tenant will correspond to an Azure tenant and to an Office tenant for that matter. If you have this kind of situations where you have more than one tenant, our recommendation is to try to synchronize all of that to a single SIM, hopefully Sentinel, and get that data into one pane of glass, so you are able to see the data from more than the one tenant within a single interface.
Thanks, Johan. The next one goes, can you detect secrets posted on code using MCAS?
So you mean content? I assume this means content inspection. As of today, the GitHub connector does not support content inspection for the code files that are stored in GitHub. You can see the activities and trigger very relevant policies like we showed, not yet for content inspection. Idan, if you have more insight on that.
Yeah, usually what we recommend is using the CI/CD tool that will detect content inspection when you when you deploy the code. Until right now, the GitHub API, the newest GitHub API, doesn't support the content inspection. And when it will support, we will add this support also.
Great, thank you. And another question related to connectors, but this one goes as any plans for a connector for self-hosted GitHub instances?
By self-hosted, you mean hosted on-premise, or I mean, could be in a cloud app, but in a cloud environment, but not the GitHub cloud. I assume that's what it is.
Yeah. So right now, I assume also that this is self-host. So right now, no, we don't have plans. Usually, what we working with GitHub directly to the SaaS application to GitHub, and we work like this in Slack, in Salesforce also, and to non cloud application like this, we don't have the support right now.
So there is one thing you might be able to do if you are authenticating to this self-hosted GitHub using Azure AD, and you are able to publish it through the Azure AD web proxy. You could apply a conditional access app control, which is the reverse proxy feature of MCAS. This could be another half an hour discussion, even more. But this, if you are able to publish that through Azure Web Proxy, you can go down this road to have some level of protection. It would be very different from what we saw here. None of those templates would apply in that case, but you could have some level of protection on those applications.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that. And before we conclude, I just wanted to remind the folks that in case we missed, or in case if they have additional questions, they can visit Microsoft Cloud App Security Forum at aka.ms/MCAS community. And on March 16, we're starting the new series on diversity and inclusion. We'll kick off our first session with Sue Lowe. Sue is a software engineer here at Microsoft and the author of a young adult hacker novel titled Raven. And with this, we're hoping to inspire the girls out there and other underrepresented groups who are interested in entering the technology field. So as well as in May, which we have not published yet, there will be more MCAS webinars coming. And to register and to review the full list of the upcoming webinars, please visit us at aka.ms/security webinars. I would like to close this webinar by thanking Jon and Idan for an awesome presentation. Thank you to the rest of the team who helped answering the questions. And most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Goodbye.